Um, let me close that. And so I started thinking about this when I was at school, that if I was going to work for somebody else, let's do international. So I started kind of laying the foundation while I was at Baylor. I studied a foreign language, so I studied Portuguese, which isn't the best foreign language to study for international business. It kind of limits you to a handful of countries. So it wasn't the best choice, but still getting exposure to foreign languages was great. Baylor's got a lot of study abroad programs. I'm sure this semester and probably next semester it's a little bit limited. But as you guys go through Baylor, and I know at the business school, there's a lot of opportunities for it. So you can look at that. The BEST program, Business Excellence Scholarship Team, it's for primarily seniors, kind of the people who are excelling academically can apply for the BEST program. It was a year-long, it still is, a year-long program your senior year, and you kind of do some strategy work. So we worked with a local company in Waco, doing some strategy work, figuring out how they can grow their business. But then there was an aspect of it, when I was a senior, there was an aspect 1 week that we studied in Canada at HEC Montreal and University of Ottawa. And then the second semester, we studied down in Costa Rica. And so we went to the University of San Jose and took some classes down there for a week. And I know since then, we've traveled all over the world. I think the last year might have been Czech Republic, but I know they've gone to Asia, Mexico, across several countries in Europe. So that's a really good program. If you guys are going to be studying business, that's an awesome program to get involved with your senior year, but you guys need to be doing the legwork now, because academic success your freshman, sophomore, and junior year weighs heavily into whether you get admitted into that program. And I think there's about 30 students or so. And then also international student groups. I'm obviously Kansan, so going to school in Texas, sometimes I felt like an international student because, you know, if you're not from Texas and you're from somewhere different, everything else is different. And Texas is its own country and everything. But I got involved in international student groups just to get exposure to international students. My roommate all 4 years was an international student. He was from Zimbabwe. He's still one of my best friends to this day, and his name is Rhett. So my son was named after him. He's still in Waco, so every time I'm down in Waco, I go visit him. But just getting plugged into the international student groups, I felt like it was a really, really good thing to just learn about other people, learn about where they came from. It helps you appreciate what you have, and it also helps you appreciate what they have. Not everything in Northeast Kansas is the best. And so I can happily say that, you know, there are great things about where I live now, but there's great things about other places. Going to Baylor was that first step. But then like I said, while I was there, just getting exposure to all those other places just by associating with some people from other countries. The next thing was, like I said, choosing to work for a company with international connections. If you work for a company that has 100 employees and they're all in Dallas, the likelihood of you going international is very slim. So if the company that you're going to go work for does international work or has international offices, obviously the higher likelihood of you getting to go over there. And I would say one of the biggest things for me was considering the timing. For me, when I got asked to go out of the country, it was really easy. At the time, I didn't have a dog. I didn't have a wife or kids or a girlfriend. So if I was asked, hey, I need you to be in England next week, be like, sweet, let's go. And so I can kind of drop things on a dime and pack up my stuff and go to another country really quickly. Now with a business that I have, with kids, with dogs, with a wife, I need to plan a lot further ahead. So considering that timing, making those decisions of, you know, if you do want to work internationally, figuring out what's the time in life that you're able to do that. And not that you can't do it when you're married. You just have another human being that you need to consider. And then being open-minded, that was a really big thing of, you know, if you have opportunities to work internationally and you're turning them down because, you know, you only want to work in Sydney, Australia, or you only want to work in London, those opportunities don't come on very often. But if you're willing to take projects that aren't in the most glamorous places like Manila, Philippines, when you say yes to some things, other doors open. They're like, well, Andy was great working internationally in the Philippines. now this opportunity in England is coming. Let's offer it to Andy again. So just keep an open mind about where you want to go, the duration and things like that. Taking risks, again, me moving to South Africa, I got on an airplane, flew down there, got in a taxi. I didn't even have a place to stay. So I went up to a hotel, found it, and then ultimately ended up getting an apartment down there. Obviously be smart with your risks, and it can pay off. And then I would say other thing about working internationally is just immerse yourself in the culture. One of the greatest things that I had when I lived in the Philippines, like I said, I was the only American that was over there. And so I didn't find like my clique of American friends, and I only hung out with them. Everybody that I hung out with was an international person. So it was whether it was some South Africans went over there, all over Asia. We had a dinner club. So every Wednesday night we went out to a restaurant together and tried different foods. And on the weekends, we decide, let's go to Hanoi, Vietnam this weekend, or let's go to Beijing and let's go see, Hong Kong or Taiwan or wherever. And really just tried to find those things where I knew as soon as I moved back to the United States, I wasn't going to be able to experience. I can promise you that Chinese food at PF Chang's is not the same as Chinese food in a small town in rural China. So when you do get those opportunities to go international, immerse yourself in the culture as much as possible. So as I made the transition from the corporate world to now self-employment, like I said, I knew I was going to work for myself at some point. It was November of 2014, which honestly, it feels like yesterday, but the past 6 months has also felt like it's lasted about 10 years.
That's not my backpack. Wait, no.
Nope, that's not his backpack. And so it was 2014. With Accenture, we actually did what they call laddering. So they take all of the analysts, and there's thousands of analysts, and we actually go through and rank them 1 through whatever. And so I was a senior manager. I was 1 level away from being a partner. And that year in November, they came out and said, I got a really high rating. I got a 0% raise. My bonus was funded at 44% of target. So if I was supposed to get a 20% bonus, instead I was going to get an 8.8% bonus. When I got this information, obviously I was disappointed because I worked really hard, got a high rating and no raise. And my career counselor at the time said, it was a rough year for Accenture. We didn't make as much money as we wanted to, so the raises weren't there. But the exact same week we got that information, our stock hit an all-time high. So I made the decision at that point where it's like, you know what, I'm done working for somebody else really hard, because if I work really hard and we do well, I'm going to get paid the same. I'd rather take that risk, work really hard, and if I do a good job, then I'm going to be rewarded for it. So that November of 2014, I decided that I was going to start working for myself. So I looked at what are some business ideas that I can go out and do stuff on my own. But just like with buying a house, you can actually go out and look for businesses that are for sale. And so the website's called Biz Buy Sell is one of them, but they also have business brokers that you can go work with them, say, this is the kind of business I'm looking for, and they'll help kind of pair you with a business that matches what you're looking for. So I decided I was going to take the route of buying a business. There's obviously benefits and drawbacks to that. So obviously it's going to cost a little bit more to buy a successful business than starting one from scratch, because you can start a business from scratch tomorrow by, buying a URL, building a website, doing things, e-commerce or whatever you want to do with very little upfront cost, but you're not going to make money right away. With a successful business, month 1, we were cash flow positive. And so I knew based on the previous 5 years that this business was open about how much it was going to make in April, the year I took it over, or the month that I took it over, and I can grow it from there. So yes, it costs more upfront, but I'm not going to have to keep investing more and more money to close that gap with cash flows. You inherit the good when you buy a business. So they've already got the customer base. There's already cash flow. The processes are in place. The equipment's in place. So everything's already there for you to continue running it. we also inherit the bad. And so there could be some bad employees who work there. Well, guess what? Now all of a sudden they're your employees. If there's neglected repairs, like when I took over here, literally on the first day, they were like, did they tell you about the flooding? I was like, oh my gosh, no, they didn't tell me about the flooding. And so that was just something that I needed to deal with on day one. Whatever bad history you have, whether it's bad reviews, Google reviews or Yelp reviews or whatever people are using now. So that's out there. So you've got to change that reputation. But ultimately it was a good thing for me because I can come in, because I had all that experience working for Accenture and learning how to manage people, working with customers and working with clients and figuring out process improvements. I could come in, learn this business really, really quickly, because again, that's what I did with consulting, and then start finding efficiencies and ways to make the team happier and ways to grow the business. So that was 2004 or 2015. So just over 5 years ago. For the first couple of years, it was cool, let's just make this business run really, really smooth. After 2 years of doing that, I kind of got bored because I'm like, man, this store is running well. The team is operating really, really well. We decreased turnover because I have low turnover, then they know what they're doing. So there's not a lot of retraining and the costs that go along with that. So it's like, all right, let's start growing this business. So I partnered with somebody to license out the name. And so we've got a few stores that are licensed, and I actually started some other stores on my own. So this is my business. It's Wiltz Play and Stay. So it's a doggy daycare, boarding, and grooming facility. So the picture that you're looking at here, I think this might be the only picture with some dogs in it. Maybe there's one at the end. But it's a doggy daycare where people can drop off their dogs on the way to work, pick them up after work, leave their dogs with us when they're going out of town for a night, or they're going on a long vacation for a month. They can board their dogs with us. And then we also do grooming and training as well. So like I said, this was the original store. So this is the play yard for the original store. I now have 5 stores. 3 of them are in Kansas City. One's in Lawrence, which is where University of Kansas is about 30 minutes west of here. And my other store is 30 minutes west of that in Topeka, which is the hometown I grew up in. So everything for the stores that I own are pretty close to me. And there are 4 more licensed locations. One in Columbia, Missouri, where University of Missouri is. One's in Manhattan, Kansas, where K-State is. And then 2 are down in Wichita. So they're all in the area. But we've grown the first year. When I took over, we were at about $720,000 in revenue for this original store. Last year, we did about $1.25 million in revenue. And this would have been the 2nd or 3rd place store out of the 5 that I owned, the 5 that I own. But obviously, COVID has taken a huge hit. So when you think about the business that I'm in, with daycare, boarding, and grooming being the 3 primary revenue streams. For boarding, people board their dogs when they travel. Right now, nobody's traveling. This summer, we still had boarding, but it was a different kind of boarding. Instead of somebody going to Florida for a week or going to Europe for 2 weeks, they were going to the lake for a 3-day weekend, or they were going to Dallas or St. Louis or Omaha or something for a 3 or 4 day weekend. So we'd get their dogs for 3 or 4 days, but we weren't getting those 1 and 2 week vacations like we'd seen in the past. Now we're thinking about all those business travelers. Well, they're not traveling anymore. Think about my colleagues at Accenture. They're not getting on airplanes every Monday morning and flying to work. And so those weekday travelers that we used to see, we're just not seeing that yet. So that's all the boarding revenue. Daycare, on the daycare side, like I said, on your way to work, you drop your dog off and then you pick him up on your way home. Well, if all of a sudden your work is now in your living room, or you go down to the basement to your home office, well, doggy daycare is not on your way to work anymore. So people could spend a lot more time with their dogs. They don't need somebody else to care for them or let them out in the middle of the day. So daycare really, really went down as well. And honestly, my biggest competition is kids and students. So even if the parents still were going into the office, now they've got their kids at home. They can say, hey, take Biscotti out at lunchtime just to make sure she goes outside. By the way, this little dog here, I don't know if you can see it kind of front and center, that's little Biscotti. But if she needs to go outside in the middle of the day, there's typically whether it's the parents or the kids are going to be at home and can let the dog out in the middle of the day. So daycare still existed, but it really went down, especially April. Revenue from boarding was down 96%. Revenue for daycare was down 60%, and grooming was down 100% because that was deemed a non-essential. And so we couldn't do any grooming at all for a little while. So things have picked back up. It's certainly not where it was. From a boarding perspective, we're not going to be where we were until really people feel comfortable traveling, which is in all honesty going to be hopefully next year, but certainly not before a vaccine is around and well distributed. Daycare, we were talking before this class started about the schools here in Kansas City. My kids are in elementary school. They've been hybrid for the past couple of weeks. We just started early September. So that means 2 days a week they're in school and 3 days a week they're at home. Middle school and high school has been all virtual. And so with some people starting to go back to school, we're seeing a little bit more daycare. 2 weeks from now, or about a week and a half from now, elementary school is all in person, and middle school and high school are now going to be hybrid, where they split time between home and school. And so again, without people at home, someone's going to need to take care of their dogs. And so we anticipate another bump where, okay, there's more students at home, and more students at school. So if there's more students at school, there's probably going to be more parents going into the office. And so we're anticipating a bump just in the next couple of weeks as well from a daycare perspective. And then grooming, as soon as we were able to open grooming back up, it went gangbusters for a while because people weren't washing their dogs. They weren't giving them haircuts. For all the people who have doodles out there, they weren't brushing their dogs every day like they should if you have a doodle. And so we've kind of cleared that backlog. But I think because people are spending a lot more time with their dogs now, they're more receptive and more in tune with their dog and be like, oh my gosh, my dog smells, they need a bath. Where if they were only spending 15 or 20 minutes a day with their dog, they can put up with it. But now that the dog is sitting at their feet while they're working from home or sitting on the couch as they're working there, they're around that dog a lot more. So want to keep them a lot cleaner, which is good for us here. And also I wrote there, I have about 85 employees right now. When I started, we had about 16 when we had just the one store. So that's grown quite a bit too. And when I had the one store, I was obviously in the store, I would like to say 5 days a week, but in all reality, it was a little bit more than that. But as we've grown and developed the team, those first couple of years, like I said, after 2 years, I was getting kind of bored. And it wasn't because I lost my passion for working for myself or lost my passion for Wolf's. It was that my team is so developed that they didn't need me anymore. They knew what to do. They were doing a great job with it. They were very conscious about expenses and keeping labor costs where we needed to keep them and growing the business. That they had it. So it really opened up the opportunity for me to look at other ways for us to grow. So obviously there's not like 6 things that are going to make you successful, but as I look back on my 10.5 years with Accenture and my 5.5 or so years working for myself, these things I felt like came up over and over and over again for me that have helped me get to where I am now. The first one is ask. It's really hard as a manager to know exactly what all my employees want. If they want to be a groomer, I'm not going to know that. Now, if somebody comes and asks me, hey, I want to be a groomer one day, great. I know you planted that seed, so I know. For me, I remember the first thing that really stuck out to me was when I was working for Chevron. I was just a consultant, so I was a lower level employee with Accenture. And I remember seeing all these people around me, higher level people, getting to go overseas and work in South Africa and work all over Southeast Asia. And I was never getting asked. So I remember going over to the partner's cube, his name was Chris, and asking if I can work overseas. And he said no. But then it was a couple months later, he was like, hey, do you still want to work overseas? And I said, yeah, I do. And he's like, great, I need you to move to South Africa. I don't think he ever would have asked me if I hadn't planted that seed with him. And so by asking the question, the worst answer you're going to get is no, which just means you're in the exact same position you are today. And so ask, because you might hear yes, you might hear no, or a lot of times you might hear not yet. And for when I asked Chris if I can go work overseas, essentially the answer was not yet. but at least he knew that that was my desire. The second thing for me was getting out of your comfort zone. And so, like I said, growing up in Kansas, all my friends went to school here in Kansas, or they didn't go to school at all, and they all stayed in Kansas. That first step for me of going to Baylor, where, I had visited Baylor once before I committed to Baylor, and I felt so at home there. It felt like an easy way to get out of my comfort zone where I was still fairly protected. But by doing that, I felt like I thrived at Baylor, and it was like, cool, what's the next thing? So it was moving to New York City. Like literally the very first time I was in New York City was when I was there with my car full of stuff. I went and knocked on a door. I set up a roommate. I'd never met her before, knocked on the door and met my roommate for the first time. Left my car out on the street while I went up and knocked, and I absolutely loved New York. So then when other opportunities came, as you do that, you're just flexing muscles that you didn't know you had. And my comfort zone just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And so it might be a new location, but it was something that I was used to at that point. So now there's not a lot of situations where I don't feel comfortable. And it was because I started doing that early. Number 3 was pay attention. And this was really, really big at Accenture. And now that I have my own business, it's still really big. And so what I mean by pay attention is when I was at Accenture, my job would be to do A, B, and C. I would always pay attention to what the people around me were doing. And so if the person next to me, if their job was to do X, Y, and Z, cool, I just kind of paid attention to what they were doing, because you never know what that next role is going to be for you. And so that next client I was with and be like, hey, I need you to do X, Y, and Z. I'm like, sweet, I don't know exactly how to do this, but I paid attention. I kind of get the idea. And so I'm not starting from scratch every time. How I relate it to now, I pay attention to what my competitors are doing, not just my competitors here in Kansas City, but I get on competitors' websites in Waco, Texas, and Erie, Pennsylvania, or Cleveland, Ohio, and just look at what they're doing and seeing what I can do to make my business better. Number 4 is focus on the positive. We're all going to be getting crappy situations at some point, whether it's having to take classes online, or having to be completely virtual, or whatever, having to wear a mask. Like, nobody loves wearing a mask, but there's always good things about it. And so for me, again, with Accenture, I was living in New York City. I just wanted to travel. So I did everything I could not to be on projects in New York City. Because if I got to travel every Monday morning, well, heck, they were paying for my food every week. I was getting frequent flyer miles and hotel points. And on the weekends, I had the option of either flying back home to New York City or just flying wherever I wanted to. There was one project where they really wanted me to be on a project in New York City, and I didn't want to, but I did it anyway. It happened. It was a really small team, but one of the other analysts on the project on my team there is now one of my best friends. I was the groomsman for him. He was a groomsman for me. We talk all the time. He went to Northwestern, but I brought him down to Baylor a couple of years ago, and he fell in love with Baylor. So there was something good that came out of a project I didn't want to be on. There was another one in Chicago where it was, I loved being in Chicago, but I hated the work I was doing. Well, I ended up meeting my wife there. And so regardless of the situation, there's something good you can get out of it. If you have a terrible boss, learn how to not be a terrible boss. Be like, great, when I'm a boss and I'm leading a team, I'm not going to do these things. So focus on something you can get out of it. 5, avoid waste. Early on for me, it was avoiding cost waste, and I would not waste money. I'm at the point now where, yeah, I don't want to waste money, but I don't want to waste time. I can always earn more money to make up for whatever money I lost, but you can't get time back. And so I'm just trying to be as efficient as you can. And if you think about it, when you're at Baylor, stacking your classes on certain days or right up next to each other, so you don't have that hour or 2-hour gap where you're just kind of sitting around not doing a whole lot. So as I've gotten older, and as my daughter says, I have some glitter in my hair now, but I'm just really, really mindful about avoiding any kind of waste. And finally, number 6 was don't believe in the golden handcuffs. I don't know how many people have heard the expression golden handcuffs, but the idea is you work for a company and they're giving you enough benefits and enough salary or whatever it is to kind of lock you in. And for Accenture, I had a great salary. I had 5 weeks of paid vacation and health insurance and 401k, and I had my network built out and everything. it's hard to ask for more out of an employer. So they kind of had me, I could have looked at it as they have me trapped. Like, they've got me in handcuffs. They're golden handcuffs. They're great because look how beautiful they are and everything that I'm getting out of them. But if that's ultimately not what you want to be doing, it's never too late to leave. So I was very mindful right after school. One of my friends I went to Baylor with, he started with Northwestern Mutual, and he just encouraged me to start saving right away. So 6 months after I graduated from Baylor, I started an account, and every month was putting money away. And I used that to make my down payment on buying Wiltz. So those are the 6 things that really, over the past, 15, 16 years of working, have really helped me get to where I am. So it's not the be all end all, but those are 6 things that helped me. And then finally, it's just my shameless plug. I don't know how many people have seen Dumb and Dumber, but if there's one cool thing that came out of 2020, it's my new vehicle. So I took my Honda Element and actually covered it with shag carpet. We're taking this on a 4,000-mile road trip starting on Sunday. For those of you who have seen Dumb and Dumber, it starts in Providence, Rhode Island. So we're taking it from Kansas City up to Providence and back, taking different routes each way. We're gonna hit 21 states and Washington, D.C., and just take pictures with this vehicle all along the way. So follow us on Wiltz. And I'm actually supposed to be in Waco in a couple weeks. So if you see this thing on campus, be sure to come by and say hi too.
That is awesome, Andy.
My wife is mortified when she has to ride in it, but
She
it's
is.
an added perk.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. I wanted to ask you to tell the students about how you structured your deal with respect to the real estate, and that you had to use your real estate savvy when you bought this business as well.
Yeah. So when I bought Wiltz, the first store, there was the property and the business. And so the way we structured it, when I made the offer to the original owners, it was for a set price. But the way I set it up was I created a real estate company. It's a holding company called Blue River Holdings. And so Blue River Holdings now has multiple properties. Wiltz is just a tenant. And so I've got 2 different businesses there. And so Wiltz, my operating business, has to pay rent to my other business. And there's a couple benefits of that. One, from a liability perspective, if somebody wanted to sue Wiltz for whatever reason, well, they're limited to the business entity and they can't touch the building. There's tax incentives to do it. It's not tax evasion or anything, but there's tax benefits for structuring it like that. And as I think about growth going forward, if I'd ever decide, hey, I want to get out of the doggy daycare business, I could sell the doggy daycare, but then keep getting rent off of the doggy daycare that's there. Or vice versa, if I'm like, you know what, I don't want to be in real estate management anymore, I can sell the business, and they call it a sell lease back, where I could sell the building, but then just have a lease and keep renting that building from whoever that new owner is.
Okay, thank you. All right, so our first question is from Heather DeGrassa. Heather, are you out there? She may be having trouble with her audio. Oh, are you there?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Oh, should I ask my question?
Yeah, go ahead.
So when you took over this business, what made it stand out compared to the other businesses you were looking at?
That's a great question. I actually looked at a lot of businesses. This was the first business that I looked at. And from a cash flow perspective, I was like, it's not making as much money as I wanted it to, that I was looking for. So I went and looked at other businesses. I looked at a asphalt resurfacing company that made tons and tons of money. But then I was like, man, I could never wake up in the morning and think, man, I get to resurface the Walmart parking lot today. This is going to be an awesome day. And so ultimately it came back to like, what am I going to be happy with? Like literally, I get to bring my dogs with me to work. I get to play with dogs. And I mean, Shura is my girlfriend. She's a 4-year-old golden retriever. Like literally she comes in the lobby and she pees on the floor. She's so excited to see me. Like it's hard to get that at other businesses. And if you do, that's weird. Dogs are kind of the only thing that's socially acceptable. So it was just something I was going to get excited about. And I feel like my passion for the business is fed down to my team. And so they're passionate about what they do, which then it carries over to our customers too. So that's helped grow it. Thanks for the question, Heather.
Okay, Zach Zawatsky, you want to come forward? Sometimes takes them a second.
I was just wondering what your favorite kind of dog is.
Giant Schnauzer. So I've got a
Really?
giant. Yeah, they're not very unique, or they're not very common, but they've got a very dominant personality. They're very protective. I've got a giant Schnauzer. I've had her for 12 years. She's kind of on her last leg right now, but there was another giant Schnauzer here, Hunter, and this dog, I'd be in the yard with it and it would not get close to me. And so I just, for months, would work on this dog and just try to touch it. And then as soon as I touched him, he would run away from me. But then it ultimately got to the point where there was two guys that he liked in his life. It was his dad and me. So if he saw me, he would break away from his dad and come give me a hug. And he was a 140-pound dog. So it was a very strong hug.
Wow.
But there's lots of great dogs. That's just my favorite.
Yeah.
Braden Lewis, you have your hand up.
Yeah, so when coronavirus affected your business, did you change any of the marketing or offer different products to your clients?
We didn't change, like marketing. The biggest thing with what that we do with marketing is social media. So we kind of ramped up how often we're taking pictures. We wanted to show pictures of kind of busy play yards. Where in the past, we kind of wanted to show how spacious we were. So that was one of the differences we made. If we showed, hey, look at all the dogs that are here to our customers that weren't coming, they're going to think, oh man, other people are bringing their dogs there. I should probably bring my dog back. So that was one thing, kind of a shift that we did there. From a product offering perspective, we didn't really, I mean, since we have some retail here from a services, it's kind of hard to ramp up. And the services that we don't offer are like at home, which everybody's at home now. So that's something that actually was hit harder than what we do. And then dog training is the other one that isn't one of our big revenue streams. So we partnered with a dog trainer so we can refer people there. But then this Wiltz Mobile, again, another shameless plug, is another thing that we did just like, cool, if I don't have time to do this now, I'm never going to have time to do it. And so this was kind of a big marketing thing that we did too. Literally, I'll be driving down the highway and see people taking pictures and videos. Just this past Friday, somebody sent me a video of that their friend sent them as he was driving down the highway, videotaping me driving next to him.
Okay, Bastion Posey, your question's kind of along the same vein, so it'd be a good follow-up.
Thank you for your time. So my question is, do you have any planned expansions to your services offered at Wolf's Play and Stay, such as offering a drop-off grooming service or selling dog soap products?
Selling dog what products? Sorry, Bastion?
Soap products.
Soap?
Shampoo.
Yeah. So from a pickup and drop off, like some people do what they call mobile grooming. So like a big van will go out to someone's house and groom their dog there. That's something that we're not looking into. But as far as pickup and delivery, we've actually tried that at one store. Just the cost and the logistics of doing that is really tough. And from an economics perspective, didn't make a whole lot of sense. Especially in Kansas City where we're really, really spread out. If I've got one customer who's, 15 minutes in one direction, another one that's 10 minutes in another direction, the revenue I would get off of that versus the cost of having one of my employees drive over there, plus the cost of the vehicle and the liability and everything like that, just really wasn't, it was kind of cost prohibitive to do the pickup and drop off. But as far as grooming products go, so whether it's soap or combs and things, we're actually testing that out in some of our stores because some people love when they pick up their dog, not only do they look good, but they smell good too. And so it can be the soap, but there's also like doggy cologne that we always make sure we spritz on the dogs before they leave too.
Let's see, Jonah Droman, you have your hand up.
Thanks for your time. So my question was there any specific opportunity you took that pushed you out of your comfort zone more than the others?
I mean, like I said, jumping to Baylor was the first really big jump out of my comfort zone, just because that's, if you guys can hear that, that's Buddy. Hold on. Buddy's gonna come and say hi. Sorry, he always has to come and say hi to me. And so Baylor was the first time, but I was still kind of insulated because, you know, everybody was moving to Baylor. Most people aren't from Waco, so everybody was kind of getting out of their comfort zones. But that was the first time, and like I explained, like it's kind of like working out. Like that was the first time I exercised those muscles, so it just got a little bit easier. Moving to New York was really tough. I didn't know a single person in New York City. And that is not a friendly city. When you go to Baylor campus and you've got that welcome week where everyone's kind of like wide-eyed and like, I need friends, they don't do that for you in New York, shockingly. It's just like, as soon as you get there, it's get out of my way. So New York was probably the toughest one, but that would not have been possible if I had not gone to Baylor first.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, Elizabeth Churchman, are you out there? I think I hear you. Well, Elizabeth wanted to know, what was a difficult lesson that you had to learn that helped shape how you operate the business today?
You cannot make everybody happy all the time. When I think back at the first year, if I would get a customer complaint or a 1-star review or something like that, I would like panic almost. But then I got to the point where realized that there's a lot of Karens out there who are just going to complain because they want something for free, or, you know, they wanted their dog's haircut to be 1/2 inch, and instead of 1/2 of an inch, it was 7/16 of an inch, and they're going to flip out because of that. I realized like I've fired customers and said, you know what, this probably isn't the best place for you to go, and asked them to go other places. But that was, like I said, at first, I do whatever I can to make everybody happy, but then you're not going to make everybody happy. So know your limits of where you're going to give. I've told other people who, whether it's in relationships or business relationships or whatever, in life, I feel like there's givers and there's takers. I feel like I'm a giver. I mean, everyone probably feels like they're a giver. But if you're a giver, know your limits, because takers don't have limits. They're going to keep taking and keep taking and keep taking until you say no. And so just know how much you're willing to give before you say no.
Okay, I've got Aben Hirschfelder's got your hand up out there. Aben.
Hello. I kind of have a 2-part question, and the first one was, how do you keep the dogs from like spreading fleas and bites and stuff? And the second part, probably the more important piece of that, is how do you solve those problems? And is it like in a think tank? How do you come up with those ideas?
And like, what kind of, are you talking like problems with fleas, or what kind of problems are you talking about?
Problems like when you run into design or making things run smoothly.
Okay. So the first part, like dealing with whether it's sickness, kennel cough is a thing, or just dealing with anything, fleas, worms, ticks, things like that. We're lucky that the customers that come to us, you typically treat their dogs like family members. So we actually haven't had a flea or tick problem. We've had some dogs that have fleas or ticks on them, but it's isolated. Because I'm not in the rescue side of things where we see the neglected dogs, and not that you have to have neglect your dog for them to get fleas. But people really, most of my customers do what they can. But when we do see it, like if a dog has worms or something, we obviously isolate the dog, tell the parents, and they're very receptive to it. As far as coming up with ideas, I realize I don't know everything, and nobody knows everything. And so when you have a team, I wouldn't call it a think tank, but I've got people who have years of experience of dealing with dogs. Lean on the people that are around you too. You know, if 1 out of 10 ideas of theirs is a good idea, well, cool. Listen to 10 ideas of theirs, and there's going to be a good one. So lean on the people that in all levels. Like I don't just go to my general manager and be like, hey, how should we do this? Like if it's how should we deal with something in the yard, I'm going to talk to the people who are spending all their time in the yard, because they're going to think about, hey, if we did it like this, it'd be easier, faster, cheaper, or whatever. So I lean on I talk to everybody in my organization, from the newest person to the person who's been here for 12 years.
Okay, Dante has a question. Dante, are you out there?
Yeah. I was wondering, as an entrepreneur with many locations, what kind of tasks do you have to do on a daily basis?
This morning I was fixing a breaker box. I honestly, every day is different, and I am a type A person. I plan my day. Here's the things I need to get done today. But there's always those, as a business owner, there's always those unplanned things that I've got to deal with. And I've got to balance, like for the electrical stuff, I'm going to spend 10 or 15 minutes on it. If I can't figure it out in 10 or 15 minutes, I know I need to call Kyle, my electrician. He's going to charge me $300 to fix it. And so, I mean, I do everything from payroll to figuring out health insurance for my employees and what's the best option, to setting up a 401k for them, to all the menial stuff of like, yep, the groomer's auto surge is clogged. How do we get that fixed? And so what I'm trying to do is, if I have to do everything, I'm a bottleneck. And so as I'm trying to fix things and do things, I grab one of my employees. I'm like, hey, I'm going to show you what I'm doing right now. And so they learn how to do it. So the next time it doesn't have to be me. But yeah, I mean, everything is different. And some days, like Monday, I was did a golf event with Big Brothers Big Sisters of Kansas City to network and grow the business. Like that's something that really is on my shoulders to do. And so that's, you know, the expression of working on the business versus working in the business. I have to balance that of, yeah, I still want to work in the business because it's with dogs and it's fun. But at the same time, I need to work on the business and figure out, you know, how are we going to get through COVID on the backside even stronger than when we went in.
How do you decide how to spread your time among your 5 stores?
The original store is kind of my home office. If you can see behind me, it's not really an office. It's literally a hallway that I put a desk in. So I had to put signs on 2 doors that says, I'm on a call, don't walk through. So that's kind of where I base myself out of. But I'm just on a schedule. So like the Leawood store, I'm there on Monday afternoons and meet with that general manager. Tuesday, I'm there with that general manager, Tuesday afternoons, and meet with her, and we plan for the week. The other stores, I have people who help run the other stores, Lawrence and Topeka, that are further away. I have a partner, and so working with him to make sure we've got coverage. But I go to those stores as well and check in and meet with those guys and look at their financials.
Okay. Kane Follender, are you still out there?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So what makes you decide on where to open a new location for your business?
There's a lot of things that go into it. So you can look at, it's called a market analysis. So not only do I look at my competitors that are there, just because there's somebody there doesn't mean I can't go there. It just means like, cool, what offerings do they have? Can I do it better than them? Can I do it at a better price? Or are they doing it way too cheap that the whole market wouldn't accept the prices that I have? And so if I look at Topeka, for example, there were already 3 doggy daycares there, but they weren't very nice. And so I can go in and provide a better service at a lower cost. And so if I'm like, cool, that is a market, then you got to take it down to the next level and be like, okay, now we need to find the right location. And unfortunately with doggy daycares, people want them to be convenient to them, but nobody wants the doggy daycare in their backyard. I mean, you guys heard when Buddy came up to say goodbye to me, he says hi to other people in the back. And if there was a neighborhood right behind this building, they wouldn't be happy that they were hearing dogs barking all day long. So we've got to factor in zoning and things like that as well.
Ben Gamble, are you still out there? Ben? All right, how about Skylar Ballard?
Hi.
Hi, Skylar.
What other businesses are you are you interested in pursuing in the future that aren't like doggy daycares? Like, do you have another passion, maybe like another entrepreneurship venture that you would consider yourself pursuing?
Right now, I don't. So Mrs. Mackin and I were talking. I owned a deli for a while. So 3 years ago, when I was 2 years into this, I got bored. I bought a deli, and I ended up selling it. I own a very small percentage of it now, so I sold most of it because I didn't have a passion for it. And I felt like, you know, if it needed my time, how could you ever get passionate about it? Making an Italian sub. I was always found I was like, okay, I'm going to deal with the dogs because it's just more fun for me. So right now I don't have, nothing is sticking out to me as like, what's next? Like, honestly, right now, I can't imagine what I would be doing if I wasn't doing doggy daycare. But pre-COVID, I was looking at, great, I'm going to have all these stores. It's going to be generating more money than I need. And so what's the next thing? But the next thing doesn't necessarily need to be me running the business. It could be me investing in advising somebody who's kind of putting in the legwork I've done here. So I think that will probably be the next thing, being kind of an investor and an advisor for something. I just don't know what that opportunity is yet.
All right, and the last question will go to Nate Klein. Nate, are you still out there? So we're almost out of time. Nate may have had to leave. He wanted to know about your thoughts on government business regulation.
So in the state of Kansas, doggy daycares have very low regulations. We get a state inspection. Some states have human to dog ratios. Kansas doesn't. I mean, depending upon the industry, regulation is a good thing. The Cleveland River used to catch on fire all the time. Nobody wants that. So we have to have some sort of regulations. Unemployment insurance or workers' comp insurance are good things. That's regulation. Minimum wage is a good thing. There's a balance between like overstepping and then the government managing how I run my business. But I feel like let's protect everybody. Let's make the economic environment good for a business owner, because I took a lot of risk. This year is going to be one of those years where it's not that financially profitable, but last year was. So that's great for me, but let's also have some sort of protections for the employees too. So there's certainly a balance there.
All right, unfortunately, it's 2 o'clock, so we are 10 minutes past where we should be, but we still had like 28 questions in the queue, so I'm sorry, students, that we didn't get to everybody's questions, but thank you so much, Andy. We really, really enjoyed your talk. I know the students got a lot out of it, so thank you so much. Students, don't forget you have homework due tomorrow night, so and a test next week. So thanks everybody, and y'all have a really good day.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank
And look for
Thank
me
you.
in the Wolfsmobile in a couple weeks.
Thank
Thanks, Andy.
Thank you.
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 I don't know if you see, you're also getting a lot of thank yous in the chat as well.
Awesome.
Mhm.
This was fun.
I know. See, they're really, really. You got to 300, by the way. We hit the
Oh,
Zoom.
awesome. Well, good.
So I told you they're really wanting interaction. I mean,
Yeah.
I was really concerned about how these were going to work out, having these through Zoom. But actually the students have been really excited about getting to have a chance to interact with you guys. So thank you so much. I know it looks like a few students are hanging around. I don't know if they have some questions. And I know John said he wanted to talk to you.
Yeah, I don't know. We might have had a different Zoom meeting set up.
Okay. Those of you that were hanging around, did y'all want to say something to Andy?
I had a quick question for Andy if he still has a second.
Yeah, go for it.
So how did you exactly find a business like Wolf for Sale and the asphalt business?
So go to bizbuysell.com. BIZBUYSELL. And so, have you ever been on like Zillow or Realtor.com?
Yes, sir.
Biz by Sell is the same thing. You set your parameters of like, I want to look in Kansas, I want to look in this industry and things like that. There's all these filters. Or you could just be like, I just want to look at businesses for sale in Texas and look at everything. And it's all listed there. And so
perfect.
They don't tell you the business name, but it'll be like, an asphalt resurfacing company. Here's the asking price, here's the cash flow, and then kind of a synopsis. Generally speaking, they'll be listed with a broker. You need to reach out to the broker and typically sign a non-disclosure agreement. So you don't like go up to that business and talk to the employees and be like, hey, did you know this business is for sale? That's obviously they don't want. But yeah, check out Biz by Sell or just Google like business brokers. So like Apex Business Broker is one that's here in Kansas City. So I can look at their listings. But again, just like realtors, you can go to the realtor's website or you can go to the Zillow